And hi everybody, welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, the economic crisis of 2008 certainly had an effect on every facet of life. Now there's new research that shows that the actual creation of life has taken a direct hit as part of the recession's aftermath. The birth rate is the lowest it's been since 1920. Take a look.
The U.S. birth rate has fallen to a record low, says a new Pew study, with the biggest decline felt among immigrant women hit hard by the recession. According to the report, the overall rate of births per 1,000 women ages 15 to 44 fell by 8% between 2007 and 2010. Currently, the numbers are some of the lowest since records began in 1920. Many cite the recession of 2008 as a main factor to why births for the U.S.-born Latinas, in particular, have dropped so rapidly, as Hispanics have had larger percentage declines in household wealth than white, black, or Asian households in recent years.
Having a family, it costs money, and however many children you have, it takes a lot financially.
Meanwhile, another change in the American household: more singles. Data now shows that fewer adults in the country are married, 51% compared to 72% in 1960, and that Americans on average are getting married at a later age than ever.
I definitely think it is, and also times are changing. There's no longer pressure to start a family so young. Times are evolving. There's a career, and there's just so much that you can accomplish.
And in related matters, the phenomenon of adult professionals living with roommates well into their 30s and 40s is becoming more and more common, and not just in New York City. What's behind these social changes, and what could they mean for the nation's future?
That's the new picture of adulthood
I look at that picture
in
and I'm
America.
like, oh, please, can I date one of you?
Right,
No.
right. Can't keep my hands off them. Well, guys, let's discuss what is behind the social shift, the social changes here. I mean, there is an element of economics behind it, the recession, the aftermath. But come on, you look at the last 50 years, the fabric of our culture has changed, specifically with women, education, homemakers. I mean, it's all directly related. So,
well, speaking as a woman.
Yes, and a gorgeous woman you are.
Bless your heart and the rest of your organs. I don't have children. I got married in my 40s. I was very aware in my 20s and my 30s of the cost of those kinds of things.
The cost of those critters?
Like having a family. And
right.
At the time, I thought, yeah, I'll have a family when I'm able to afford it. Dying,
Okay. So wait, is that the major reason? It's economic for you?
For me, it's again, I'm just a guy, but for me, it was 100%.
So if that wasn't a factor,
also you need somebody
kids.
else to do that with, and I'd much rather be with somebody who I want to be with, and let's have a family. As opposed to I want to have a family and I'll just take the first available person.
Right.
I mean,
you could have got
somebody else,
egg
but
donor,
you don't anymore.
Actually,
I have
that's a good
three
point.
words for you. Freeze your eggs.
IVF, three letters?
Well, that too. Those are three letters, TWB.
Thank you.
But no, look, I am at that point where if I don't have children soon, it's not going to happen. There's always adoption, of course, which I'm entirely open to. But, as someone who, for a variety of reasons, even though I was engaged once, ended up not getting married, it's been very challenging to try to find the right partner to have that right family, even if you want to, and then move ahead with having a family.
Right.
So it's a question of, as I'm sure you are well aware, especially in a city like New York City, you'd be surprised that somehow a lot of people really want to have their own life more than they want to build their own little community.
And I don't think New York City is a metaphor for the United States, because it really is the anomaly. I mean, what goes on in New York City is not going on in the majority of places around the country.
I'm not sure if that's true or false in terms of the birth rates.
But just in terms of lifestyle.
Well, lifestyle, I think it may be macro, microcosmic. I think the Peter Pan syndrome comes into account. I think those three couch potatoes we saw in that come into play on that. But I think also certainly the women's movement, people actually devoting themselves to their careers and really putting that whole thing on hold, sometimes forever. The opportunities, I think, now in medical science to have children later and later and later. I mean, you have grandmother age people carrying babies now. But I'll tell you something. When I look at, say, ultra-religious people that I used to be critical of, some of their patterns and their habits and their societies, I have to say that's one thing I think that they've got right. Is kids going out, actually young people going out and starting families really young. Because even though we can kind of talk about, this is just another topic we have today, birth rate, dropping birth rate. This is serious stuff.
Is that a bad thing?
It's a very bad thing.
In Manhattan, everybody's so crowded.
I
think we need to.
I don't think it's a bad thing. I think if you look at the entire world and the population of the world and our capacity to support that population, declining birth rates, not necessarily here, but globally, are actually going to be a very, very good thing for us long term. But I think, you know, when you decide to have a family, and WJ, you know this, it is a tremendous economic decision. It is a tremendous, I mean, people can make it based on passion and make it.
That's not the way my family got started. Actually, we were flat broke, and we said, it's
still an economic decision. Even if you make it that way, it's still an economic decision. You still are committing yourself, if you're a responsible person, to providing for your children for 18 plus years. And so
it's a convenient excuse for people who are walking away from responsibility. And I'm going to throw this one here as well.
Too judgmental, WJ.
Judgmental. How about that?
Judgmental.
Listen, too much attention on fantasy, recreational sex, and not enough attention on the fact that sex is about procreation.
No, come on.
I'm sitting right here.
Really?
Sitting right here.
That might be how you feel about your own personal family, but to try to impose that on other people, for most people in this country and around the world, sex is not for procreation.
Speaking of around the world and an imposition, let's see what France is doing. Some say that government needs to support more family values and more procreation. Take a look.
France is great in that regard.
In France's generous welfare system, mothers get to recover in hospital for 3 days after giving birth, 5 if there's a C-section. But that's about to change. Like everywhere in Europe, the government is cutting back on maternity stays to save money. 1 day less at the clinic and help at home instead.
Hospital stays cost more than home care by independent midwives. So in future, we should expect women to be made to leave hospital quickly.
Not necessarily an enticing prospect for those concerned.
I'd like to get a good rest before leaving so I can look after my baby.
With just over 2 children per woman on average, France has the second highest birth rate in Europe after Ireland, and hospitals are overflowing with mothers and their newborns.
We juggle with the beds. We often add a bed to a twin room. And sometimes we'll keep a woman who gives birth at 7 or 8 in the morning in the delivery room until 11. We even give her breakfast here because her room is not ready.
For the moment, the option of going home early is entirely up to the women concerned. But lack of funds may mean that this will soon no longer be a choice, but a necessity.
For the record, I was told that France has the second highest birth rate in Europe. Just a little tidbit for you.
Second highest?
Something that, Francesca, I wanted your opinion on this, and the men as well. New York Times columnist, he ascribes the U.S. declining birth rate to the decadence of American women. I want to just, where is this man? I want to spit in his face.
This is right from WJ's heart.
I mean, how offensive. I mean, how do you even dignify that with an answer?
Really? Are you sure about
the New York Times?
Yes, the New York Times columnist.
Decadence.
Yes, the decadence of American. What does that mean?
I just think it's the me culture gone amok. I mean, at a certain level, you know, there was this, speaking of a different paper, the New York Daily News, there was a posting about this Williamsburg couple that had been together for 5 years. One was 30, one was 31. I don't know if you saw the video.
I did.
Okay, so, you know, it's very cute. There's this little song about how I don't want babies, but I want babies. And so that's why they broke up, is because she wanted to stay independent and he wanted to have a family. I think that there is some merit to the fact that more and more people are saying that they choose their own life and they choose their own independence over having families. Part of it is due to the fact that they don't necessarily find the right partner. But in this case, she was unabashedly unapologetic about her choices. And I don't know if it's about decadence per se. I'm not sure that she's spending all of her money on Fendi bags. I think that she just wants to be able to have her freedom. And that is part of what the women's liberation movement fought for in the 60s and the 70s, and why we have the, you know, Gloria Steinems and why we have the Marlo Thomases sitting there saying that women, you know, have really been able to take their own lives into their own hands and make choices. The problem with women, I think, though, is that they don't realize that there are some choices that are limited biologically and financially. So even if you want to freeze your eggs, that's an important thing to do when you're 30 as opposed to when you're 40. And that's, you know, those kinds of options like IVF and other kinds of, you know, potentially ways of having a family, even if you are married with someone, those are the kinds of things that you're going to start to need to think about when you're in college, even if you want to go through grad school and start your career right away. And I think that more and more people are thinking too late that they want to have a family, because this woman is only 31 and she said she didn't want babies. I'd like to talk to her in 10 years and see what she says.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think in my parents' generation, there was never a question. You were always having a family. The economics didn't come into play. It's what everybody did. You did it 23, 24. You'd make it work. I don't think that the generation
And they were
today,
struggling. They were struggling terribly.
Exactly, but it's like today, people don't want to struggle. It's the me generation. You know, I mean, for me that works. But
I'm going to clarify one thing, actually, for James's sake. I was in college in the late '60s and early '70s. If you can imagine, in terms of talking about profligate behavior, you're talking about actually kind of a liberalism about sexuality.
Keep talking.
No, but one of the warnings that we got at that time growing up was you'd never get somebody pregnant out of wedlock, and that was kind of this terrible thought that you were always holding in your mind, and you were very careful. It's going to ruin your life. You got somebody pregnant. Well, the fact is that I wish that I hadn't really taken that in quite as literally as I was growing up. I wish I'd started a family earlier. And I think that I do maintain that it's important for a culture to have a strong birth rate. And I don't think it's about false morality or anything else.
So is there something that the government should be doing, or we as a society should be doing to make having children more
Tax
desirable?
breaks for babies.
Something.
So there already are tax
Make
breaks
it more
for having
affordable.
children. I don't know about government intervention here. I certainly know that I don't want to make any kind of judgment about
you
the
already
decisions
have your
that people
kids.
make.
How many
But
kids do you
I
have?
have two, and WJ, you're right. There are tremendous advantages to starting early. It's harder economically. And when I say economic, I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about economics in terms of you have to make choices and resources and things of that nature. So starting early for me worked out really well. My son is 13, my daughter's 11. I'm going to be an empty nester before I'm 50. So that's great. But everyone can't make those decisions. Everyone doesn't find a partner in time to do that. And so it's a very, very complicated thing. But we have to underscore here that part of the reason why our birth rates are going to either plateau or continue to decline a little bit is because of women's reproductive rights. And at the end of the day, that's something that we want. That's more freedom in our society for people to make choices.
And I do think that the government could come in by doing things that it's not doing that you do find in other European countries, including places like
support
France.
for daycare.
Exactly. For
maternity leave.
Healthcare. Universal healthcare would do it.
A male maternity leave, more daycare. You know, those kind of flex programs, flex time at work for women to be able to work in different kind of environments so they can also take care of their kids. Those are the kinds of things that the real women's agenda should be about, and the family agenda and the male agenda.
And the male agenda,
so
that's
that
right.
men can then step in and be the parents and the partners that we're all now expected to be to one another, not just the husband who works and the wife that stays
But
at
whatever
home.
we do, let's do it quickly, because the children are our future.
I just want to point out one thing.
Says Whitney Houston.
Because I've never raised a child, I have never had to watch a Disney film 73 times.
Well, you're missing out. I've only watched 172. But do you have any regrets? I mean, as a man,
no.
you can always have
No,
a child.
I'll tell you why I don't have any regrets. Because I know a lot of people who, friends of mine, colleagues of mine, who got married at a certain age because they realized it was time was running out. They wanted to have a child, they wanted to have a family, and they went out to find somebody who could help them biologically have that child. And to the person, every person I'm thinking about right now, they're divorced. They're in conflict. They're in tension. It is. Of course, it's never going to be the idyllic situation.
Well, everybody else is divorced too, so
everyone's divorced. I don't know. It just was a simpler time 50 years ago. I don't know what happened. Facebook, Twitter. That's what happened. That's what I blame. I blame everything on social media. That's the bottom line. And we have to go to break. From birth rate to the marriage rate. Up next, it's all about more social change. Why are more and more Americans delaying marriage? Also had more and more American professionals are choosing to live with roommates later in life. So what's behind these social shifts? That's next on Fresh Outlook. Stay with us. More social change.